Good job, Jennifer.
Welcome, everyone.
Oh, just to clarify, in my koozies, carbonated water. I just wanted to throw that out there.
That's the story you're gonna go with.
I realized I just grabbed a koozie on camera and was like, oh, that might look a little odd, but it's carbonated water. Watermelon mint, by the way, highly recommend it.
Oh, what kind? That sounds tasty.
Don't know, Target brand.
Oh, okay.
They had peach ginger, watermelon mint.
Nice.
No,
Okay.
I prefer the peach ginger, but I drank all those.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, I can't see anything. There we go.
If we want to type in the chat where you're from, what your role is, and maybe one goal you want to take away from this presentation, that'd be great. Chrissy and I kind of know what you are hoping to get out of this.
And where you're from. I'm very curious where everyone's from today.
I know, I am too.
Oops, and I just closed my chat, so now I don't know. Grosse Pointe Public Schools.
Where is that? Where's Grosse Pointe Public Schools?
It sounds really familiar.
Michigan.
Michigan.
Oh.
Okay, I never would have guessed that. So apparently it's not familiar to me. North Carolina. Kansas. Kansas, I have some neighbors in here. Ooh, French.
Lots of Kansas.
I know. Some Illinois. All right, it is 6:01. Jennifer, did you want us to go ahead and get started, or do you want us to wait?
Hold on 1 second.
Hawaii. Is it really early in Hawaii, or is it really late? It's really early, right?
Yeah, it's early.
It's early. So
Have to just get out of school.
yeah. So welcome. My name is Jennifer Locke, and I work in the Teacher Quality Department at NEA. And we are really privileged to have Kim Stout and Chrissy Waldhoer with us today, who are going to be talking about connection before curriculum. And did I just make a mess of your last name, Chrissy?
Yeah, but it's fine.
How do you pronounce it correctly?
Waldorf.
Waldorf. Okay, so welcome. And it was the first day of school for Kim. Chrissy's higher ed now. So, thank you for showing up. We know you're all starting back to school, and I'm going to pass it over. Oh, okay. Anything you want to say before we move on?
Nope, you're
Okay.
good.
All right. And then I'll do the land acknowledgement. Okay, we begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands served by the Nacotchtank people. We honor America's first people, all elders past, present, and emerging. And Robert, I don't know if he's here as a participant, and I don't see his name listed. If you're here, Robert, can you speak up in the chat? And if he is, we'll come back to Robert. Okay, and we'll go on. Of course, you know that NEA's mission is to advocate for all professionals, for great public schools for all children. And so really tonight we're focusing in on the practice piece and having members talk about their professional practice and how they build community in their classrooms.
I'm going to skip through this because I kind of go over that.
Yep.
Okay. So, thank you, Jennifer. So as Jennifer pointed out, my name is Chrissy Waldorf. My email address on this page is actually wrong because that is my fault. I did not update it. I recently moved from the classroom into a new role at the University of Arkansas I now work for the Office of Innovation for Education as a learning, design, and innovation coach. But before that, I was a reading language arts teacher for 7 years in a 5th grade classroom in Oklahoma. So I haven't changed my state since that is my home state, or was, but technically I'm on the border. So I kind of claim the whole northeast area of Oklahoma, northwest area of Arkansas. And I'll pass it on to Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Stout. I teach 4th grade in Helena, Montana. Today was my first day back at school with students. I'm a little fried. It was a rough one, as I'm sure if you have started school, you might have experienced the same thing with one of those days where you'd have no idea what's going on, even though you've had 21 first days of school in your life. I felt like I was flying by the seat of my pants all day. I'm slightly fried, just a little, but I told Chrissy I will forge through. So Chrissy, she's going to do the majority of the talking today, and I will be moderating the chat. Please use the chat. Please know that you can use anything from this slideshow for your own at any time. And Chrissy?
Yep, thank you. So as Kim said, if you're not talking, please mute your mic. However, we love to communicate with the participants because it really helps us guide where we are trying to go with the presentation or with the webinar. So please, at any time, if you have something to add or share, please jump in and share with us. If you're not comfortable speaking up, feel free to type in the chat box. Like Kim said, she will be watching that to interject me when I start talking too fast and to give us your thoughts and opinions. So share with us. All right, so our mission today is to really determine how we can make connections between staff and students to understand and manage emotions, show empathy, and establish and maintain relationships. So on the right, we know that learning is all about connections. And one of the most important ones we are realizing now with COVID is that human and social connection, which is what we're really going to focus on today. So that being said, I really was going to share some great resources about how stress has affected us all during COVID. And I found this great statistic that said a survey of 25,400 6th to 12th graders found that less than a third of middle schoolers had a strong relationship with their teachers, and that number dropped to 16% by the time the students reached 12th grade. So there's a huge disconnect, right? And it's even stronger in these low income backgrounds. And now with COVID, we're seeing that even more. Even as adults, we've noticed. And so I just did a simple Google search, right, of COVID and stress, or trying to just see what was out there. And you can see on bottom all of the topics that came up that people are Googling and writing about lately. So we know it's there. We know that this stress has come on. We know that it's affecting all of us, including our kids. So where do we go from there? So some things we're going to look at today.
Hey, Chrissy.
Yes, ma'am.
I just noticed that Robert Rodriguez is with us. So.
Oh, okay. Robert, would you like me to pause and do your introduction?
Hi, Chrissy. Hi, Kim. How are you guys doing today? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
sure can.
Wonderful. I just wanted to welcome everyone to our 4th webinar series that we have here today. May I take a point of personal privilege, please, or to our speakers?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. So first of all, I'd like to begin with our land acknowledgement. I don't know if you guys had a chance to do one yet.
There you go.
Wonderful. Just really quickly, we want to, as part of our tradition here at the National Education Association, we begin by acknowledging that we meet on the traditional lands served by our first people. I live and teach in San Bernardino, California, which is home to the Serrano Band of Mission Indians. The word Serrano means Highlander. And to tell you a little bit about their present history today, their immediate past chief, James Ramos, is the first elected public official in the state of California, serving in the state assembly. And he is one of our strongest advocates for public education in our state. I share this with all of you. I think we finally got the video working. There we go, so I can see all of you. I share this with all of you because it's really important that we honor the past, but that we also honor the present when acknowledging our Native American lands that we serve on. We honor America's first people and all elders, past, present, and emerging. Thank you so much, Chrissy and Kim, for the session that you are hosting tonight. This is the 4th webinar of our national series for the school year. And as we launch our return to in-person instruction back to school, I am excited for all of you. But mostly I'm excited about this topic. And I want to say thank you to all of you. Leading in a pandemic is hard, and so is teaching. And this webinar is one way that NEA is trying to support the members in their professional work. Last year was a weird year, and many are approaching this year with trepidation. The topic for tonight's webinar is super relevant to remind all of us about the importance of the connection with our students. A reminder that NEA is just a simple reminder that NEA isn't endorsing any particular product or platform that may be discussed. Instead, these webinars are about members leading members, and it's talking specifically about how we can do teaching in the spaces that we are in. Tonight's member experts, Chrissy and Kim, you are my heroes tonight because you're talking about something that is very near and dear to my heart. So after we hear, I don't want to take any more time. On behalf of our officers and the executive committee, we welcome you to tonight's session. But I also want to remind all of you at the very end to please complete our evaluation form, because this is really important to us in order to guide the work that we're doing. And so that I don't waste any more time, Chrissy and Kim, thank you so much for allowing me to interject. Take it away, ladies.
Thank you, Robert. And as I skip back to the page we were on really quick, I just want to point out that we are going to go over quite a bit tonight. And I know that can always feel overwhelming when you're watching a webinar or when you're part of a training and you have all these ideas thrown at you at once. So please do not try to go back and do everything you saw tonight, but definitely if you see something, hold on to it, hold on to that one thing that you can start with and add more later. And I've tried to do a couple different things tonight that are really going to build a list of ideas that you can refer back to throughout the school year, so that if you do forget or it does get busy at the start of year, you can always come back to it. So before we get too in depth, I know it's easy to sit around and talk about the stress that COVID's caused and how hard it was last year and maybe our fears now. But I also want to point out that there's some really great things that came with the pandemic in my classroom. And one of those things would be that last year showed me that kids still could be kids. So like I said, I taught 5th grade for 7 years. For 6 of those years, I had kids who thought they were too cool for school. They were the oldest in the elementary school. And by the time they came to me, they didn't want to play because that was just not their thing. They wanted to stand around. They wanted to pass notes. They wanted to be more mature than they were because they were ready to go to junior high. Last year, our COVID year, my kids were the exact opposite. They were playing pretend. I had to make them cardboard fake cell phones that they carried around the classroom and played with in their free time. They played house. They did play acting. They were excited to do read alouds and to listen to books being read to them again. And they were so happy to be back in class and at school. They were more engaged in school assignments and activities than in all of my 7 years combined. And what that led to was us being closer as a class. So I have some pictures of my actual class that I put in here. You can see on the right side, my swings were full. Like kids that never touched the swing set because that wasn't cool last year, swang all day long, had competitions. We had all kinds of games with the swings. And then on the left, they were actually playing like some jailer game. I never did understand their rules, but it was basically tag. But they started to play those things again and pretend again. And it was absolutely fabulous to see them embracing their childhood again. Some other things that I took away that were positive was my right to advocacy. So my right to advocate for my kids. And one of the ways that I did that was to relax my classroom. Obviously, last year it was a little bit easier because they took away state testing for the state of Oklahoma. So that was a stress I didn't have to worry about. They were like, just do what you have to do and survive. So that was great. It also helped me reflect on the impact of the education. So what was most important? I didn't try to hit every single standard. I focused on my essential standards. What can I get to them and how can I do it effectively? Next, it helped me enjoy my job again. I had taken all the data and all of the pressure of the testing and everything else that we do, and I'd let that consume me for years before. And I didn't notice because I was just doing what I was told to do. Last year, I threw it all out the window and made my first priority my kids. What did they need? I knew when they came in my room, because of everything we've been through, they needed some attention, they needed some love, and they needed fun desperately. And that's what we tried to do. So what I ended up doing on Fridays, and it was one Friday where I just really wanted to surprise them at the beginning of the school year, I played Rebecca Black's song Friday. And if you've never heard this song, it's quite interesting, to say the least. So I've linked it here for you to listen in your own free time if you would like to hear Friday. It does have it's an appropriate video, so there's nothing that they can't see on it. There's nothing wrong in the lyrics. But I played that for them on the first Friday, and she just sings about how it's Friday, and they jumped up and started dancing and thought it was the greatest thing in the world. So after that, every Friday, I would play it and just kind of surprise them with it. And then we had our first virtual day, and I didn't think about it because it was virtual Friday. And I ended up getting messages from my kids that said, "Where's our song? Like we miss our Friday song." And so I even started posting it on virtual Fridays. They got to hear Rebecca Black's Friday at home. So it became part of our class culture that they knew there was a time where they got to get up and dance and sing. They got to be silly, and all together we enjoyed this tradition together. So again, if you want to add that to your traditions, there is a YouTube link for you to take away there. So first, I want to pause and share before we get too far, and I'm going to put a link to a Jamboard in the chat message or a chat box for you. But while you're in there, I just have, let me get in here. Get my link. Okay, I'm going to pop that in the chat box. So there's our Jamboard. If you will connect to our Jamboard, it just asks 2 questions. So the first one is, what are your positive takeaways from the pandemic? So I would love to see something else that you saw in your classroom or in your school that happened because of the pandemic that you were like, you know what, it was a hard year, but this was really great. So what did you see in yours? And then on the second slide, I do you have any concerns still? Are you nervous about something this year? And this one, I know we weren't going to point out the negatives, but I want to know what concerns we still have so that we kind of know where to focus, and maybe someone else in the webinar has an idea too of how we can overcome that concern together. So if you haven't used a Jamboard before, there's a little sticky note over here. You'll click on the sticky note. You can change the color if you want to, and you'll start typing your answer, and then it will save your sticky note on here. And once you get it typed, I'll make it bigger and we'll all share. So I'm going to go quiet for about 2 minutes and give everyone a chance to type on their sticky notes. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop us there so that we can read some of these that I saw. But I will leave this. Again, this is one of those things you can go back in to this later on and click on this Jamboard at any time that you need that little reminder of something positive. You're always welcome to come here and check that out. So one, kids wanted to be in school. That was really the best. They were excited to be there and they were excited to see me. And as a teacher, I think that's the best feeling in the world, aside from this teachers being recognized as heroes. just knowing that you're loved as well and they want to be there with you is so great. Also, they did become tech masters quite quickly, which was also fantastic.
I think all of these ideas are fantastic, and all of you are spot on. That yes, I feel the same way.
Yeah. I mean,
Even though I did not teach in building last year, I taught from my kitchen counter, so the entire school year. So me reading these makes me really have hope that I am going to make it through the school year after today.
You will. And there will be something that happens that you're like, oh my gosh, out of all that chaos came this really great thing that I'm going to hold on to always. I positively believe that for everyone. There's something, even this as simple as, look, we found a new way to say hi, because you don't think about not shaking hands or hugging kids. You know, I developed the back hug where you just kind of shimmied on each other to back hug, because I'm like, my group of people that I worked with, we were huggers. So yeah, you find these things. So concerns, we do still have concerns. Quarantines seem inevitable. I was just telling Kim before we started, my mom's school has already shut down in Oklahoma. So I do think that is absolutely a possibility. Social emotional needs, we're going to try to address some of those today. Mental health support. I have, yeah, addressing trauma. Yep. I have all of these concerns still as well, and the variant, of course. So we still have some things going on, but I did want to say that we do have all these positives as well. So that was kind of where we were going for that. So we were going to do breakout rooms, but honestly, I don't think we're going to have time now. Kim, what's your feeling on that?
Chrissy, I'm kind of with you, but yeah.
Okay. If we have time at the end, we will come back to breakout rooms.
I think that's a good idea. Let's do that.
We'll address this exact same thing. So we're going to switch that from now and move on to SEL for staff and students. And notice I didn't just say SEL for students. Adults, you also experience trauma, especially teachers this last year. And it is important that we also focus on our own personal, social, emotional abilities and levels at this time. So this is about, you will see both inside of this. So I don't know, I didn't see any administrators in here, but if so, or take these ideas to your administration if you can. So brain-based evidence for SEL. Obviously, we all know Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? That's like college 101 basic teaching level right there. And we know that right now we are suffering from belongingness, from being isolated, and definitely our safety needs. Those are probably the two that are hitting us the hardest. But I do love Abraham Maslow's quote, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. So we are going to see issues come up still. That's just the nature of the game, especially in a pandemic. And if we see them all as negative, we won't have a solution. So we've got to keep looking for what can we change? Where do we have power? And what can we address? So one of the things that's suggested, this is from a book that I will show you on the next slide, but it's about creating a new normal in your classroom. And that's what I really tried to do last year. I taught, for 6 years the same way, and the same things were important to me, and the same standards were what I tried to hit. And last year it was like, I tried to do that going into COVID, and then I felt so overwhelmed that I just about threw in the towel. And I think that's why so many retired during COVID, because if you try to do what you've always done, it's going to be hard. But we can be realistic with ourselves. We can say, let's give grace to ourselves. Let's allow ourselves to make mistakes and to figure out a new way. So your lesson didn't go the way you wanted to, that's fine. That's not a big deal. Tell your kids, hey, that didn't go the way I wanted to. Let's try it again. Let them know that it's okay to make mistakes. You can set that example now, and you can keep trying as well with them. Reduce you and your students' workload. So our mental capacity is already full, right? We have so many other things with stress going on with us right now, of other things we're trying to think about, that we have to lower the load. So we're doing the same lessons, we're just doing them now in smaller amounts. So we're trying to teach the same thing, we're just maybe not going in as in depth, right? We're just taking the most important parts, and that's what we're focusing on, which kind of leads to number 3, which is shift our focus from academic content to positivity and healthy relationships. We need to connect with our students now more than ever on a personal level. So this is the book that all came from. It's called Help for Billy It's a beyond consequences approach to helping challenging children in the classroom. Now, when Heather Forbes refers to children in this book, she has two names for them, right? And Billy is the deregulated student. I believe she calls it dysregulated, and I've written that wrong, but I never remember. But it's regulated and deregulated. The deregulated students are the ones that have experienced trauma, right? Great childhood trauma, which at this point, let's be honest, is quite broad now, right? It's no longer just a few students in our class. We've all experienced trauma. So this is a way to help them without racking our brains. So Help for Billy is one of my recommendations that you'll see tonight. And you can go out and find it. Second of all, she also is can't make a mistake, you can't make anything, is Pate's quote that says, be intentional about connecting with colleagues. So these are just two examples. So again, this is what we did for staff. So on the left, you'll just see a check-in that we did. Our librarian was fabulous about this. That says teaching is a walk in the park, if that park is Jurassic Park. And then everyone posted on here how they were doing. So it was literally just something that could be sent out that everybody commented on, just like we did in this group. Just to say, how are you? What's going on in your world? Are you surviving? This was during a time period where I believe we were shut down for 2 weeks at that time and teaching from home. And when we were allowed to go in the building, we were told not to leave our rooms. So it was very isolating to be in your room all day, to know that your best work buddy is right across the hall and you can't go to them. So this is one way that we could still reach out to each other and kind of cheer each other on. On the right side, you will actually see my mother's name. So my mother contracted COVID last year and was hospitalized in the ICU for quite a bit of time. And because of COVID restrictions at the hospital, we couldn't bring her anything. And normally when someone gets sick at our school, we would put together a care basket, we deliver it to them, you know, everybody pitches in, and it's this great thing so that you know you're loved and supported and to help you feel better. Well, COVID destroyed all of that. So it was really about what can we do? And again, we just did a simple Jamboard. Everyone popped on just to say, hey, I hope you feel better. We're praying for you. We're thinking of you. And then we were able to screenshot that and just text it to her so that even though she was in the hospital and far away, we were still able to connect and let her know that, hey, we're thinking about you. So Jamboard, Padlets, those super simple check-ins of how are you doing? Where are you at? You know, are you feeling okay? It's not about what's your data at this point. It's just, are you okay? And this is something that you can send out, your admin can send out, doesn't matter where it starts, as long as you're connecting as a staff. So I did also do this with families. And this was a Google form that I sent out and made just to see how my kids were doing. So you can see I asked them how they were feeling, and I tried to give them some simple words because again, this was 5th grade and they weren't all on a 5th grade level, but I wanted to send out the same form. I asked if they could use a phone call. You know, do you need me to call you? No one said yes, unfortunately. I was very sad about that, but that's fine. Did they have everything at home that they needed? You know, I didn't want to get too specific, but I did need to know if we could provide them with something. Do they feel safe at home? Yes or no? We need help in the form of safety, food or safety, because my school did do some food programs to help feed them. And then finally, I just had an open-ended, I would like Mrs. Waldor to know. And these are some of the responses that I got. I'm doing fine at home. When I finish my work, I get bored. I miss you. My mom burnt sausage today. Hi, I don't hate school anymore. And some work can't do because I am very busy and that I am doing very good. So my favorite obviously is my mom burnt sausage today, because who doesn't love those details that students share? But this was just a quick way for me to check in, for me to know that my kids were doing okay. And to give them that option to talk to me. This was one of the first ones I did. They did get even better as the year went on because they started to really relax and know me better, which means they shared all kinds of great information. But again, this was super simple. I used Google Classroom, so I could just post the form on Google Classroom for them to access. Then, if you have not ever heard of Buddy Berry, I highly suggest you watch this very second one, Buddy Berry's How to Set Your School on Fire. Buddy Berry is a superintendent for a very, very, very tiny school in Eminence, Kentucky. And he is, one, absolutely hilarious, but very motivating. Even in the worst of school years, he makes you want to set your school on fire, as he says. And jokingly, my theme for last year was, I'm going to burn it down, when I had a stressful day. And then I met Buddy Berry, how to set your school on fire. And I was like, it was meant to be, buddy. So I highly suggest him. But so Buddy Berry has this principle that he calls surprise and delight. And it's very simple. A surprise and a delight is anything that surprises you and delights you. And that's it. But he highly suggests them for your students and for your staff. So just to show you some very basic examples, I have taken some pictures of my favorite surprise and delights to share with you. So on the left, you will see a Sonic cherry limeade. And if you do not have a Sonic near you, I am very sorry. You are missing out on something fantastic in the world.
I am missing out on something fantastic in the world, Chrissy. There is no Sonic anywhere near me.
I am so sorry. Sonic ice is like what heaven is made of. I swear, heaven just has Sonic ice machines everywhere because it's fantastic. Doesn't matter what you put in it. But my favorite thing at Sonic's cherry limeades is when you don't just get 2 cherries or sometimes none. That's not a surprise and delight, but they'll throw like 4 or 5 in there. That's like the best surprise ever, because you open a cup and you're like, oh my God, half a jar of cherries in here. So that is my number one. Then I have my child's surprise and delight, which is when she comes home, opens the freezer and realizes I bought her favorite ice cream, right? That's a great surprise and delight. Then this one, Cool Greens Market. I was actually in the airport on the way home from vacation this year, and our plane was late, of course, because of COVID, I'm sure. And we, like, every food station shut down because of COVID at 8 o'clock at night, and we had nowhere to eat. And I was literally starving because I'm a foodie and I needed to eat, and there was nothing. But then I stumbled across a vending machine with healthy food options from Cool Greens, which I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world. Swipe your card, no attendant, I can eat what I want. So that was a massive surprise and delight. Shout out to DFW Airport. And then finally, no, not yet. On the right, my final surprise and delight that I wanted to share with you is when you go to a hotel and they have robes and house shoes. I do not wear robes and house shoes at home, like, ever. I don't even think that I own them. But when I go to a hotel and there are robes and house shoes, I feel like the fanciest person that's ever existed. So that's a huge surprise and delight for me when I go to a hotel. So now Kim has some that are more school related. So we'll let Kim share hers.
So at my school, we do some things. Chrissy kind of talked about if you were on remote and away from school, some things that you could do to make sure that people were feeling, included, and, the check-ins, where my things are a little bit more in person. So on the left, I have the 4 Georgian staff favorites. Every year we make this massive spreadsheet of our entire staff. And I just took a little snippet of the position, and then we have your favorite school beverage that you could have, and then your favorite school treat or snack. And then we use this list all year long to treat each other. So last year, even though I taught from home, I would get door surprises. Someone would show up at my door with maybe my favorite drink and my favorite candy. Just so, we can make each other feel good about, one another, and, hey, I'm thinking about you. And then in turn, I did a treat for all of my teaching partners and took them their favorite drink and their favorite snack and left it on their door over the weekend. So then they had this treat to come into. So that's something that's kind of cool. Our PTO also uses this list for like staff appreciation days, and they go and buy us our favorite treats and our favorite snacks. I have the snack cart. So we have the Husky Honeys, and then we have the Fun Patrol. The Husky Honeys is the 4 Georgians singing group. We are not all women, and it's not all women in the singing group, but they sing parodies for fun. We get together and we change words to songs, and then we, sing at random times, like the Husky Honeys come meet at 12 o'clock because we're gonna, do a little staff fun. It's a good time. It's a good way to connect with each other, have some laughs, and enjoy each other's company. The Fun Patrol does different things throughout the year. This is a picture of their snack cart that they had last week at one of our trainings. So they load up the snack cart and they go around to everyone's PLC meeting and hand out snacks. So they put the snacks in a little paper bag, and of course they're all individually wrapped and everything because of COVID. And then they hand you your snack and they go on their way. They do different things for national days of the year. We got stickers on National Sticker Day. We got coffee cards on National Coffee Day. So they do a lot of different things, but they call themselves the Fun Patrol. Again, it's just another way to have that camaraderie and to enjoy one another. Last week, after we finished our PLC meeting a little bit early, we all had our masks on and we went and played volleyball in the gym. Pickup game of volleyball, just something to go relax. We were socially distant, but we had some fun. So those are things that you can do. I'm sure you guys have a lot of things that you do in your buildings. These are just some things that we do.
Yep, and I think they're so important. Also, I've decided I'm super easy to please apparently, because if you came at me with that snack cart, it would like make my whole week.
I know, the snack cart is where it is at, people.
I'm like, how easy am I to be like, let's do it, give me a snack. So now that we've kind of shared ours, we'd like for you to provide in the chat a surprise and delight that maybe you have enjoyed. So what's something that was a surprise and delight for you? What is an idea that you think would be a good surprise and delight for students? And then finally, what's something that would be a good surprise and delight for staff? So we'll give you about, I'll say 3 minutes, because sometimes the chat box likes to slow down just a little bit when we're trying to wait on chats. So we will reconvene at 6:37. And
I'm really excited about this one, Chrissy. I'm excited to see what other people do. I need some new ideas for my staff.
Agreed. Mine used to, okay, I'm going to talk while you guys are typing your answers.
Okay. Yeah.
So we had a district meeting every year, right? Beginning of the year, end of the year. End of the year, we always did a fun skit. So one year we did lip sync battle, and my school did Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. We did the full choreographed dance and lip sync to Rhythm Nation and won the thing and won some giant lips. It was fantastic. Our superintendent did Miley Cyrus's Wrecking Ball and came in on a wrecking ball. They pushed her around the stage. It was like those things that you never forget, that you're like, this is why I love this place. But yeah, little things. Oh, volleyball, they did volleyball as well.
Volleyball is an easy one to socially distance.
That is a good one. An accidental onion ring in my fry order.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yes. Virtual birthday collages. Oh, I love that.
Oh, that's a good one.
Don't you feel special on your birthday when you get something like that?
Yes, that's a fantastic one.
That is. Fun sticker, nice kind. Yep, exactly. You can do it just because. Who needs a reason? Love that. Yep, another Sonic fan. Oh, and Diet Cherry.
You guys are making me jealous with this whole Sonic thing. I've literally never been to one.
Oh, surprise and delight lottery ticket for each staff member.
Oh, that is a fantastic one too.
Yeah.
Ooh, lunch provided. All about me slideshow with no.
I gotta say, lunch provided is also, I love when the PTO does that, or district, and they're like, look, we've got you lunch. I'm like, best day ever. New stickers.
Who doesn't love extra recess?
I know. Listen, my daughter in Arkansas gets 2 recesses a day, and she thinks it's the greatest thing ever. She's like, I never want to go back to my old school because I get 2 recesses. What's a dilly bar?
Oh, dilly bar. You don't know what a dilly bar is? Oh, that's something I do know. It's like a big ice cream on a stick that's like coated in either like chocolate or cherry from Dairy Queen. You know what a Dairy Queen is?
We have Dairy Queen. I got to go order a dilly bar.
Oh, they're fantastic. Oh, I love the dance mob.
Oh, I know.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that we did this.
I love that. You could catch someone doing something good and then they get a token chip and then you can turn in a prize. I love that. I love dance parties too. Agreed. I always wanted to organize a flash mob, like with my class. I never found a reason, but I think it'd be really fun. Okay. I said, did I say 6:37 or 6:38? I feel like I said
38.
I did. Okay. I got one more minute. If anybody else wants to pop in. I'm loving these ideas. And it makes me.
I also appreciate the ideas. I love getting new things to do with my kids and with the staff.
Well, I feel like you have to keep it fresh so that they're not like, oh, every year at this time we get blah, you know, every year, even if they know, oh, we get something. Being able to rejoin staff for lunch. I cannot agree with that more. Extra building subs that don't have duties and give you a release time for 10 minutes. Yep.
Oh, that's a good one.
Hopefully one day we are properly funded, everyone, and can do those things. Okay, we're at 6:38. You can keep typing your responses in because I'm sure this fabulous chat will be posted somewhere at some time so that we can come back to it. So do keep responding if you have any more ideas so that we can share those later. But for now, we're going to go ahead and move on and talk about some connection strategies in the classroom. So before I get too deep into that, I do want to point out the mental health and how it relates to the behavior. So basically our brain has two directives, which are to stay safe and to be happy. So it takes its social needs very seriously, and it's fierce in protecting an individual's sense of well-being, self-determination, and self-worth, along with connecting to the community. So we can't downplay students' need to feel safe and valued in the classroom. The brain will not seek to connect with others if it perceives them to be threatening to its social or psychological well-being based on what they say and what they do. That is actually from Zaretta Hammond, and that will be tagged on the last page, on the last slide, sorry, from her book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, which I also, it's like one of my favorite books. I highly recommend it every time. It's very heavily focused on culture and how it relates to education, but she also takes this into safety, which is what we're kind of talking about now. So how can schools help? So positive behavioral support and mental health support. So without getting too into reading a ton of stuff to you, because I know I hate it when people do that to me. But if you do want to go back and read this later, please do. But what it basically says is that over 70% of students who receive any type of mental health service, 70% of those receive it from their school. So students who are getting mental health resources are getting them from their school, about 70%. But 20% of children and youth who need mental health service or need mental health services, and only about a third of those are actually getting it. So what we see is this huge break in between our kids, where they're mostly getting it is at school, and those who aren't getting it at school aren't getting it typically at all. So there is a big breakdown. So how can we help? So some ideas that are really based on supporting students in a social emotional way. One of them is called an interconnected systems framework, and it's combined with positive behavior interventions and support, or PBIS. So my school actually used PBIS in conjunction with conscious discipline. So we combined the two to kind of make our own what worked best for us. But I'm not going to go into them too deep because they are very, very broad topics. So I don't want to say anything too confusing or try to get too far into them or talk all night. So I did just post them here. So the first one does talk about the interconnected systems framework with PBIS, and then down at the bottom is just PBIS, how it works. But basically on the right here, I have the little 3 tiers, which is PBIS in a nutshell. So tier 1 is something that everyone receives, right? This is like your reading interventions as well. Like tier 1, everybody gets tier 1 in the classroom. Tier 2 are just some of your students who need it. And then tier 3 are your few cases, but the ones that are very in need. So it breaks it down into tiers to really adjust as needed for the student so that you're taking care of the whole child. I hope that made sense and wasn't too broad. Next, these are some things that you can do in the classroom. So the first one on the left is called a safe space. This is following the principles and beliefs of conscious discipline. And there is a link right here to that to go more in depth. If you're not familiar with conscious discipline, this would be one thing that you could put in your classroom fairly easily. It's also called a calm corner in some places, and they're very similar from what I've seen. So this calm corner is actually for a school for the hard of hearing and deaf. And this was just their example of how they do it. But basically in both spaces, you have something comfortable, comfortable area. You can see the conscious disciplines a little bit more enclosed. So they, sometimes it's a tent so that they feel safe inside of there. These are different breathing techniques that are posted on the wall, the blue and white squares. There's like the pretzel breathing, the star breathing. And typically with a conscious discipline, there is some type of manual or poster to identify their feelings and to help them walk through their feelings. So they're just acknowledging how they feel at the moment, and that it's okay to be sad and it's okay to be mad, but here's how I calm myself back down. In the calm corner also, it looks like has some posters posted as well for that. Pictures of things that help calm them down are also nice. There's some feeling books, the comfort animals. So it's just a space that you allow students to go to when they need it. So they don't ask you, they just go to it when they need it. They leave when they are done. It is, I will say, both of these really require procedures in place for how you want it to be handled. So the student has to know, I don't dawdle in there, or I don't go in there and go to sleep. I go in, I take my breaths, I identify my emotion, and I move on. So you would have to come up with a procedure to do so. And both of these have their own ideas, but I just want to put them out there so you could follow one later if you decided that that would be right for your classroom. Next is incorporating culture into your classroom, which has become huge for me. It's something that I find very important, because you want to know your culture to be able to fit with your students, to be able to connect to them. I, as a reading teacher, used it to connect my literature to my students, to teach empathy to my students for maybe something they were unfamiliar with, and really just to deepen that connection with them, to say, hey, I get it. Or look, this character has the same feelings as you. So I always bring up the statistic. This is my school, my old school, and what the demographic breakdown was. So a majority of my students were Native American. The next category was always 2 or more races. And as someone from that area, I can tell you our 2 races were typically Native American and white, but we checked both because who knows which one you really are, or what percentage you need to be a majority of one. So we just checked both to be safe and cover our bases. Then we had about a quarter of a population of Hispanic, and a very, very small other minority groups in there. So that's what I had in my classroom. My literature that I was reading to them is on the right, and a majority of it was written by older white men, minus Leads on Boston Commons, and my one that was written by African-American authors focused on bringing African-American literature into the classroom. So none of my literature really fit my culture, or gave me an opportunity to show them a culture that they didn't exist in, or that didn't exist in our area. So that became really important to me. And it was my goal in my last year to really bring in as much as I could that they could relate to, that made them feel like they were at home in my classroom. And I'm going to let Kim talk about hers.
So if you look at my school in Helena, Montana, you can see how significantly different it is, with my school being 78% white and 11% Native American, like a complete switch opposite from what Chrissy is dealing with. And I ran into the same issue that Chrissy had, that most of the literature and everything was written by white men. And I have really worked hard to find other literature to bring in to expose them to these other cultures, because we just don't have the diversity in Montana. Where I'm at, there are other parts of the state that are slightly different, but surprisingly, even though we have 7 Native American reservations in Montana, we just, in the big schools and the schools around me, we don't have the diversity. If you are curious about where to find your school's breakdown, greatschools.org is where Chrissy and I both got this information from. It is not the end all and be all of the actual statistics. Of course, we all understand that. However, it is fascinating. I was like typing in every school I could think of to see, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this? And it really opened my eyes to like, wow, like, I don't want to say that I'm sheltered, but we're just not diverse. And so I have made an effort to make sure to bring that diversity into my classroom. And Chrissy is really the one that opened my eyes to that. So thank you, Chrissy. And I hope you guys can get that information too.
Thanks. I stole it from Liz. Like, it just is a trickle down effect from NEA webinars. So Zaretta Hammond, who I talked about earlier with the book, Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain. She says that culture, it turns out, is the way that every brain makes sense of the world. So what we see when we start to really look at culture in the classroom is that some cultures and some students actually come in with a negative mindset. And this negative mindset is through their culture. Like, it's literally something that's been embedded in them, whether through their culture, through the media, but that's something that they come in with. And if we can recognize that, we can really help to turn that around for our students. So some things that you might see when it comes to culture is learned helplessness. That means the student believes that they don't have any control over their ability to improve. So they just don't even need to try it. So they often don't exert any effort when faced with a challenge. We have the stereotype threat. This happens when a student becomes anxious about his inadequacies as a learner, believes he will fail, or he or she will fail an assignment or test, confirming the negative stereotype that's been associated with either their race, socioeconomic status, gender, language, any of those. Then there's internalized oppression. which is the students internalizes the negative social messages about his or her racial group, begins to believe them, and then loses confidence. And I don't think I have it on here. I do not. So usually when these things come in, this is where we can really, I say, use literature. Because if I'm talking about a story, and let's say we're talking about one that has some oppression that we can see in the book, we can help our students by turning that narrative around. We can help them form a growth mindset through their culture and using books that show their culture in a positive light and help them rewrite the story. Another really great way that I love to do that is if they come from a low socioeconomic background, or they're a second language student, I love to find an author that has that same stereotype that they have. So maybe in their mind, they have that stereotype threat where they think, oh, I'm poor, I'm always going to be poor. Well, let me find you an author that came from your background and is now successful. Let me show how you can turn it around. Let me show how you can use what skills you have to turn it around, and using that literature and those examples to really help your students in that light.
And I would love to just give a shout out to Chrissy. If you are struggling, you just need help finding a book that can do that for you. Don't spend all this time. I'm sorry, Chrissy, I'm going to throw you under the bus. Don't spend all this time searching for it. I'm telling you, she has a huge stockpile of things that she can shoot out to you for all these different cultural things that you're struggling with. For your students. She really is a fantastic resource, and she is definitely one of the fastest emails in the central time zone. You email her and she can get back to you right away with what you're looking for. So please, definitely.
And I do love a challenge. I love when somebody's like, I don't have a book on this topic, and I'm like, I will find it. I love books, and I will find whatever book you need. And I'm going to say your name wrong, I'm sure, so correct me if I'm wrong. Idalia. I want to say Idalia says that sharing personal stories. And that's one of my favorite things to do as well. So I actually talked about this in another webinar I did. I always share my personal stories. And I know some people think you shouldn't tell your students too much, but for me, if I have a student that's struggling with something and I can say, I went through that too. I experienced that as a child, and here's my experience. Because I think sometimes our students look at us and they see us as like on this pedestal. We've made it. We have a career. We have a job. We have a car. Most of us own our own house. And they see that as the epitome, in fifth grade at least, as what you should accomplish in life. So by going back and telling them, hey, I was raised by a single mom. My parents divorced when I was in fifth grade too. I can connect to them on that, and maybe they're feeling alone, and I've suddenly given them a connection that now they're not alone, because I went through that too, and I overcame that, and I moved on. So I'm a firm believer in sharing your personal connections, your personal stories with your students. Obviously, you have to decide where that line is for you of too much personal information, but I do appreciate that comment, because that is something that I always tried to do. All right. So how can we use culture to connect to families? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't just matter about that student sitting in our classroom, right? They have a whole other group at home, either supporting them or letting them go on their own. And the more we can get them involved in our classroom and feeling like they're part of it too, the more success our student is going to have. So some things that we can do is have open discussions with families about what is important to them and their culture. So we're no longer just having those parent-teacher conferences and saying, here's how your student's behavior is, here's what their grades are, here's what they're struggling with. Now we're saying, hey, tell us about your family. What's important to you? What's important to you at home? Where do you see your child's future? So get to know what it is. There are some cultures that we have in the South, at least, that have moved in from other areas that don't put a big priority on education. It's not important to them. They don't see their students going far with it. And so they don't push them in the classroom, and they don't support them in the classroom. Knowing that, for me, I can help them in my classroom in other ways, or I can help show their parents why I think their education is important or what is important to them. Likewise, I had parents that came in that were dual language, and they didn't want their student to work on the second language. They only wanted their student to focus on English and forget that they had another language. And for me, that was massive. And I always tried to sit down with that family and say, hey, this is not something negative. This is a huge positive. And I think that sometimes ESL or ELL gets kind of pushed back as an excuse. Oh, they're not learning because they're ELL. They don't read well because they're ELL. But that's okay. It's okay where they're at. They're on their own level and that's fine. But being a dual language speaker 10 years from now when they're graduating high school, that looks good on your college application. That looks good on your job application. So that's always important to me to tell those parents they need to learn good grammar in your language. They need to learn how to read in your language, because at the end of the day, you are building an awesome kid. Secondly, have literature and artwork in your classroom that reflects the cultures in your classroom, in your community, and the world. So our students need to come into our classrooms. They need to be able to look around and feel like they're at home. I was probably the number one, like literally if there was a trophy for making the classroom look uncomfortable, I earned the trophy for making the classroom look uncomfortable, because I am like OCD crazy a bit about things matching and being on the wall perfectly and being organized. And my first few years, that's what I did. I went out and bought what I thought was cute. I made the cutest little classroom that there ever was. I decorated it. It was perfect. And I didn't want my students to touch it or draw on it or mess with it. But at the end of the day, I was taking away their classroom from them. I was making it all about me and they couldn't see themselves in it at all. So I've really tried now to really go into classrooms with an open mind. What might your student want to see? Maybe they want to see a poster of someone that looks like them. Maybe they want to see a book on the shelf about a story that they can relate to. Or maybe if you're like me and you worked in the home of the Cherokee Nation, a dream catcher made by a local artist makes them feel at home. So I could go out and I could find that in my community and bring that to them. Or just show them that there are other things in the world that exist that they may not know about. And my favorite thing, I'm going all over on this one, but that's okay. Nope, I'll leave it on this one. So it says have open discussions about the differences in cultures found in the classroom, literature, current events, and the world. So as a literature teacher, one of my favorite things to say to my students is you can travel anywhere in the world in a book. So maybe you have that student who comes from a low socioeconomic status and they come to you and they want to say, oh, I've never been outside of the city. Like I've never left the city. I'm never going to leave the city. I'm not going anywhere. I don't need to know about that. It's not about having to do that. It's about being able to. And if you can show them Paris and the Eiffel Tower through a book, that child has just realized that they can go anywhere. So it's all about showing them what's out there. What can you see? Even if you can't afford it, you can still go there and you can still maybe one day strive for that. So Kim already said, check out your demographics of your school and community at greatschools.org. And then lastly, on this little TikTok list here, or chat, whatever you call these things, they're not TikToks. I meant to say ticks. What are they called? The bullets, the last bullet. It says, talk about it, don't silence it. This is a YouTube video by Dr. Beverly Tatum, who is an emeritus president of a university, and I've forgotten which one, or a college, but she is absolutely amazing. And she also wrote a book called Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together? And she talks about why children group together and sit together with those that look like them and those that like the same thing, and how we can break it up. When she says don't talk about it, don't silence it, it's because her preschooler came home one day and asked if his skin was dark because he drank chocolate milk. And she says no. And she goes in to explain that melanin causes our skin tone and that he just has more than all the other kids in the class. And this is to a preschooler. She starts to talk about melanin. And basically she says, if we keep saying, don't ask that question, it's not appropriate, and we push those uncomfortable questions aside, then we keep silencing what's going on and we don't become a society of change. So she's a really great view and full of information. Highly recommend that video later on. It's only 3 minutes, so it won't take up much of your time at all. All right, so we have a Padlet, which should be dropped in the chat shortly.
We have about 3 minutes, Chrissy.
Yes, so I'm just going to show the Padlet. Oh, hi. After I exit out of here. Oh, yay, it's already going. Okay. So if you've already accessed the Padlet, awesome job. If not, I'm going to share it right now in the chat. This is literally, I'm going to leave this open for good, for as long as I can. And you all are welcome to add your ideas on here as you see fit. That way you always have something to come back to. So right now we have, what connection strategies do you use currently in your classroom? So any ideas? What do you do right now to connect with your students? What strategies do you use in your classroom that help students feel safe? So what are some things that you do, and how do you currently incorporate culture into your classroom? So all this is we're building this Padlet for you to go back and be able to access at any time throughout the year. So if you're like, man, I could really use a new connection strategy, I've got that Padlet that I can go back to. Maybe somebody else had a really great idea. So I know we're really close to time and we are ending, but I hope you will still go ahead and add to this so that everyone can come back later and have this to use throughout the school year.
I hope so too, because I get some great ideas from what other people are doing on these Padlets. And so please, please definitely go in and add to that.
Yes, if you have a second, please do. Finally, my email, like Kim said, I try to be the fastest responder in the United States to emails, try to respond within like literally 2 minutes of the ding. So if you have any questions at any time, I love to chat with people, reach out to me. This is the correct email, by the way. So write down my email or access it later in this slide deck. And then Kim's is also on there. If you want to reach out to Kim, you are welcome to reach out to us at any time. Finally, I want to remind you that I just made the chat box huge of NEA storefront. So there are a ton of recorded webinars on here. I think Kim and I have a couple on here. Actually, you can go on here and watch any recorded webinar. And I got to say, that's one of my favorites, is to watch them. So you can kind of do it at your own pace, pause when your kids start screaming. If you live in my household, that happens. And then your exit ticket, which Jennifer also popped into the chat box. So you can fill that out as well. I have 1 minute left. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute and ask away, or pop it in the chat really quick and Kim and I will respond. Until then, I'm going to pop over to the Padlet. Let's see if it's.
Yeah, so they can't unmute themselves, but they can, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and you have the exit survey link there. As Christy said at the beginning, that's how we know what you would like in these webinars. So please complete it. And I don't know, I feel better already from just having listened to Christy and Kim tonight. So thank you. And I have ideas that I'm going to take forward in my work. And Robert, I don't know if you, any closing thoughts you want to have, and also thank you so much. I know it's really, really difficult showing up on the first day of school and in your new job. So thank you for that as well.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Christy, for all of that valuable information. I think it's wonderful, and I know I learned a lot. And thank you, all of you, for starting a wonderful school year and for representing all of us at the National Education Association. Thank you, Jennifer, Christy, and Kim.
Thank you, Robert.
Oh, I just did the Jennifer. And the Padlet is filling up, so be sure to check back in the Padlet later for ideas throughout the school year. Keep adding to it as you think of some new ones. It will never go away, so it'll just be there for everyone.
All right, I don't see any more questions, so thank you both so much.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone who came tonight.
Thank you.
You all were spectacular.
Oh, thank
I
you.
really enjoyed it. So Kim, you're from Montana. Chrissy, where are you from?
Well, I'm from Oklahoma, but I live in Arkansas.
You said from Oklahoma?
Yes, but I currently live in Arkansas. I was on the Arkansas border anyway, so.
Okay. Well, thank you all for what you do. This was fabulous. I learned a lot. I was like, oh.
Yeah, for sure.
And
All
Jennifer,
right.
you're the best. Love you guys. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.